Hello, beautiful homemakers. I am reading Pamphlet 3, Chapter 6 of the original Fascinating Womanhood pamphlets from 1922. Chapter 6 is called Winning a Man's Admiration. Every once in a while, nearly all of us come across persons who strive valiantly to please us, yet who somehow succeed only in arousing our disgust. They meet us with ingratiating smiles, cock their ears eagerly every time we open our mouths, anticipate our every wish, cackle mirthfully at every jest, and magnify our every accomplishment. They humble themselves to the point where we are almost afraid they are going to lick our hands, and in spite of 100 things they do for us deserving of gratitude, we naturally despise them for the lack of self-respect their humbleness indicates. Without this self-respect, even though they are otherwise just the kindly, friendly, joyful, and hopeful characters which ought to be personally magnetic, their efforts to please us succeed only in arousing irritation. Their fault consists in being too servile, thinking too much of us and too little of themselves. We are glad to accept the respect and approval of our equals, but we are little flattered by the toadying of those who manifestly consider themselves our inferiors. Old movies always had a character like this, usually a man working in a department store. We can't help but feel that opinions of the latter are not worth much, a feeling they themselves apparently share. If, for example, the irritating person is a woman, we can't help expecting her to respect herself as a human being, queen of all the earth's creatures, and the equal of every other human being. We naturally expect her to demand and obtain respect from others for this divinely independent, unexcelled, and self-sufficing completeness of hers. When instead we see this creature, whom nature intended to be queen of all the earth, cringing in self-effacement before ourselves, her equals, our sensibilities are shocked, and our estimation of human beings in general, including ourselves, is put to shame. Hence, our embarrassment and disgust. Being too helpful is actually irritating, especially to men. And this reminds me of a woman who was trying to be a good helpmeet, but she was just being annoying. She had decided that she was just going to do everything for this man. And her husband watched the change, and instead of rejoicing in it, he viewed it with disgust because she never said, "I can't." So one day he decided to wait until she was all snuggled in for the evening. And then he said, "Fetch me a blanket." Her first response was almost, "Fetch it yourself." But she bit her tongue, got up, got him a blanket, got all snuggled in again. He looked at her and said, "Get me a glass of water." She got up and got him the water. She looked at him and said, "Anything else?" And he said, "Yes, I'd like a companion, not a slave." And he said that if he had wanted a towel or water while he was working on a car, working out in the yard, working on the taxes, then her thoughtfulness would have been appreciated. But when he could do it himself, he didn't expect her to wait hand and foot on him, and he told her that she was being over the top. And when I was first married, I remember handing my husband a pan. I was already getting out a pan, and I anticipated his need and got out the pan that he would need. And instead of being grateful, he said, "I can get it myself. Stop being my mother." Now, I had been in a helping profession, so I was really taken aback. I thought it was, a bit rude when I was just trying to help. But what I didn't understand about men was they don't want our help. They don't need our help. That doesn't mean that you can't ever do anything for him. For instance, if you're a homemaker, you'll probably be in charge of almost everything in the home, including his laundry. It does mean, however, that you're not at his beck and call just because you're a helpmate. It means you work together as a team. You are not a slave. You are not hired help. You are his equal. You are not there to serve his every need. An example of this is my husband would have loved it if I had made a big breakfast for him every morning before he went to work. But I explained I can't. That's not who I am. I don't enjoy cooking. I don't enjoy big breakfasts. At the time I was working, and I left before he did, and I said I eat peanut butter toast every single morning, and I put it on a paper towel so that there are no dishes. I have never once made my husband breakfast in 20 years of marriage. Guess who makes the big breakfast every morning? He does. When I married him, he was a good cook. He doesn't mind. Some days he does the dishes, some days I have to do them. That's fine. We go for our walks in the morning. We come home. I make myself one piece of peanut butter toast while he makes the eggs and anything else that he would like. And then I join him for the eggs. For lunch, now that he's home several days a week, he really appreciates me making the lunch so that he doesn't have to stop work to do so. In that regard, I'm being his helpmeet because I already was going to make a lunch. As long as he doesn't complain about what I make, it's no more problem to make 2 sandwiches than 1. It's no more problem to heat up soup for 2 people than it is for 1. Outside, he takes care of everything except for the flower beds because he dislikes that. So I've taken that over. We work to each other's strengths and dislikes. Usually when one person greatly dislikes doing one thing, the other person doesn't mind it as much, and we've divided tasks in that regard. The next section is called When Good Women Are Unattractive. Then there is the woman who actually makes a slave of herself for her family and for her friends, yet who, instead of being thanked for it, is rewarded only with grudging toleration or ill-concealed aversion. The poor thing is always being called upon to do this, that, or the other thing, and is never heard to hesitate or cavil at doing it. I just looked up cavil, and it means to carp or to object frivolously. One would think, after reading in the last chapter how kindliness and friendliness add to personal charm, that such a character would quickly become a universal favorite. Why is her society, except when she can do us a favor, distasteful to us? Because she lacks pride and self-respect. Every one of us, unconsciously, carries in mind a certain ideal that we expect women to fulfill, an ideal in which daintiness, gentleness, intelligence, and nobility all contribute to form a perfect whole. When we see this divine creature woman transformed into a stupid mechanical drudge, we can't help feeling a certain contempt for the person who falls so far below our standards. In her slavery to others, she seems only to be paying the natural tribute of an inferior to her superiors, and accordingly to be undeserving either of thanks or respect. If, on the other hand, she maintains her pride and self-respect and demands our appreciation of them, we look upon her drudgery as a noble, self-sacrificing expression of an adorable character, an expression worthy of reverence instead of contempt. I hope you can picture in your mind the difference. What the popular girl lacks. There are still other happy-go-lucky creatures, big-hearted, jolly, and everything else that ought to make them delightful companions, but who are so coarse and unrefined that we shrink from their uncomfortable presence as a cat shrinks from water. They applaud uproariously everything we do, noisily betray every secret thought or wish which appeals to ourselves as too private or personal for public hearing, endeavor to put us at our ease by a rude jest that only increases our discomfort, and good-naturedly tolerates vulgar liberties which a self-respecting nature would resent. Boy, this is becoming so common. Often such women win the title of good fellow among the men, but in spite of their ready generosity and overwhelming kindness, the fact that they hold nothing sacred, either in themselves or in others, discredits our conception of the divinity of woman, and ultimately arouses contempt in men and women alike. This is the woman that has no filter, has no self-awareness, and while the men may initially like her, they will never see her as anything of a true companion. I heard a woman on YouTube say this the other day. Men chase women who have high standards. Men use women who don't. That is so true. This example of a woman that they are talking about hangs out at the bars, hangs around the men, and some of them may use her, but she will never become the wife because she is not viewed as wife material. This type of woman is not whom men see themselves bringing home to their family, to their mother. And I am not talking about tomboys. I'm talking about women who are vulgar. This should also be a good reminder to be careful what you post on social media. Think twice before you post pictures. Though this result, as in the previous examples, is due to lack of pride and self-respect, its cause may not be so self-evident. These people consider themselves the equals of anyone on earth, admit no superiors, and are at ease everywhere, all the time, and in any company. There is no toadying, cringing, diffidence, or servility here. Their offense lies in not having a humiliating estimation of themselves alone, but in having such an opinion of all mankind, themselves included. Though maintaining their equality with all others, they insist upon bringing all others down to their own coarse, vulgar, brutish conception of humanity. They ignore the finer qualities that distinguish humans from brutes: the sensitiveness, the modesty, the reverence for our own persons and those of others, the passionate clinging to high ideals of thought and conduct, the horror with which we regard the violation of sacred traditions and honored conventions. In trampling roughshod upon the finer sensibilities in themselves and us, they show a contempt for and a lack of pride in humanity that offends nearly everyone with whom they come in contact. And this is the type of woman that colleges are turning out today. The kind of men to avoid. This type of woman permits men to be over-familiar with her. But though she is apparently popular, and though she apparently has a certain attraction for men, you may rest assured that few of them look upon her as the type of woman worthy of being made a wife. her lack of pride and self-respect, her lack of reverence for her own sex, her lack of modesty and sensitiveness, arouse in the men a contempt that an otherwise perfect character cannot overcome. With the great majority of men, pride and self-respect are absolutely the first essentials for the woman who is to be a wife. The kind of men who do not insist upon these essentials are the kind of men to whom no girl should dare to trust her future happiness. It's too bad that our culture doesn't teach this anymore, because it's the truth. Instead, we see young girls throwing themselves at men and becoming intimate on the very first date. It's ridiculous. Whether in the forms just mentioned or in the 1,001 modifications of them, lack of pride and self-respect is always distasteful. Unless you respect yourself as the divine creature nature intended woman to be, others cannot respect you. Unless you have pride in yourself, you cannot maintain the proper bearing in your association with others, either in business, family, or social life. No matter how admirable your other attributes, without these qualities, society will regard you as an alien. Society indeed being too frequently and regrettably satisfied with these alone. Finally, without pride and self-respect, an otherwise perfect character is forever discredited. Consequently, though these qualities were touched upon in the last chapter as among the essentials of personal magnetism, they now deserve a longer discussion. And I want to say that if you have done things for which you are ashamed, there is forgiveness found in Christ. You only have to turn to Him and make Him Lord of your life, and He can take that shame away from you and give you a new start and give you your self-respect back. The pride we here speak of is not the false pride which has borne the censure of philosophers and teachers from time immemorial. It is not the conceited and arrogant pride which Sir Thomas More berates in his Utopia, and I'm quoting from Utopia, that one only beast, the princess and mother of all mischief, pride. She measureth not wealth and prosperity by her own commodities, but by the miseries and incommodities of others. She would not by her own good will be made a goddess if there were no wretches left whom she might be a lady over to mock and scorn, over whose miseries her felicity might shine, whose poverty she might vex, torment, and increase by gorgeously setting forth her riches. We don't speak like that anymore, so I know that was difficult to understand. They're just saying it's not the pride that goeth before a fall, as the Bible says. It's self-respect, that kind of pride. The right use of pride. Instead of being aggressive, bragging, or overbearing, true pride is contented, quiet, and considerate of others. The truly proud person, though satisfied with her equality in any association, considers it so self-evident that insistence is unnecessary. She has such a high respect for women in general that she would not think of suggesting that any other woman, no matter how handicapped in circumstances, was not her own equal. She has the same wholesome respect for men. She can appreciate and admire advantages which she herself lacks, while not thinking the less of herself for it. She does not need to be a man. Edmund Spenser best describes a woman's honorable pride, and I'm quoting, For in those lofty looks is close implied scorn of base things, disdain of foul dishonor, threatening rash eyes which gaze on her so wide, that loosely they ne dare to look upon her. Such pride is praise, such portliness is honor, that bold and innocence bears in her eyes, and her fair countenance, like a goodly banner, spreads in defiance of all enemies, was never in this world aught worthy tried without some spark of such self-pleasing pride. In short, the lofty looks of honorable pride may show scorn of base things, but not of people. Disdain of foul dishonor, but not of misfortune. They may rebuke the rash eyes that dare loosely to look upon her, as well as the tongues that are disrespectful, but they may not mock wretchedness, poverty, or simplicity. Such portliness is honor, as different from arrogance as sympathy is from mockery. I think we'll stop there. In our next video, we'll talk about how to overcome fear, the way of social success, removing your handicaps, and winning without money, and maybe even a few more things.